which is going to be by Chief of Police Jared Alvarez and Officer Jared Ramsey. Will be on substance use today in Beaverhead County. And one of Jeremy's classic lines is, if you want to buy a pair of socks in Dillon, where do you go? And there's maybe 2 places. If you want to buy drugs in Beaverhead County, there's a lot more places to go. So what's the problem with that upside down picture? And what can we as parents, as grandparents, as citizens, as neighbors, what can we do as a community to make things different? The second part of this will be specifically about naloxone, which is the, not an inhibitor, what do they call it, pardon me?
An opiate reversal.
Yes.
An opioid reversal, and it goes under the generic name of NARCAN. And Jared has specific training as far as in both explaining about NARCAN as well as NARCAN administration. So he's going to give us a little 411 on that this evening too. This is put on by the Beaverhead County DUI Drug Task Force, as well as the Beaverhead County Mental Health Local Advisory Council. There's just a lot of letters in there sometimes. Our goal is that this is the beginning of a series of community roundtables that we really hope to be doing, not through the summer, but we'll pick back up in the fall and then in the spring to really try to send the message of different things that are going on in our community around our county. We are very blessed that Sarah was so generous with her time tonight and allowed us to come after she has closed everything up and then come and get it all dirty again. So I think, yes. And I have to say, as I was making the posters for this, when I was saying Sweetwater at 7 p.m., I'm like, I want to go. It's like, well, you will be, but it's a great place to come and be. She has lovely, sweet, and savory treats back there. This is a open forum as far as for questions. These gentlemen are very, very skilled and know many, many, many things. So, take it away, boys.
Oh, thank you very much, Catherine. So I'm Jeremy Alvarez. I'm the Chief of Police in Dillon. I've been a police officer for about 7 years in the city of Dillon, and then I was about 2.5 years the assistant chief, and for the last year I've been the chief. And I've investigated a lot of crimes, from marijuana. So we have a bunch of images that we want to go through today, all the way up to homicide. I've investigated a homicide here in Dillon, and my partner tonight is Officer Jared Ramsey. He's been with us almost 5 years, and he's been a canine handler, which is usually a drug detection officer, as well as a patrol officer. I'll let you speak about what else you've done.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, like Chief Alvarez said, my name's Officer Ramsey. I've been with the department for almost 5 years now. One of the great things about being a part of Dillon Police Department is we get an opportunity to do lots of different things. So, in the 5 years that I've been with the department, I've done everything from alcohol compliance checks to my normal patrol officer duties. I was a deputy coroner. I teach a class in the community about civilian response to active shooter events. I was a canine handler. I'm a current member I'm a representative for our department for the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force for the state of Montana. So I do that as well as my normal patrol officer duties. So I get a chance to do a lot of different things, which has been great. I've gotten to learn a lot, and like Chief Alvarez said, we do everything from investigate people who run stop sign violations to people who traffic large quantities of drugs, all the way up to homicide investigations. So yeah, I've gotten a lot of experience. I've gotten a little bit of extra training as far as the drug world, just because of the time I did get to spend as a canine officer. So yeah, we'll touch on that a little more as we continue.
And please ask questions at any time. That's what we're here for.
Yep. As cops, we like to talk, and it
Yes.
just starts going. And so feel free to stop us and raise your hand and say something.
What I have up here is a lot of the drugs that we encounter on every single day. Even though marijuana is legal now, when I started it wasn't. And then it has became medical marijuana, and now we see a recreational marijuana, but it's still illegal to consume marijuana in public, and it's still illegal to consume marijuana and drive. So our DUIs on marijuana have gone up in the last couple years, and we just expect it to keep seeing it go up. What we have down here is, this is hashish oil or an extract. So the marijuana up top is probably about, medical is about 23 to 35% THC. But they're able now to extract this and get it up to 80 or 90% THC. So the high that they're able to get out of marijuana these days is not like the marijuana they had in the 70s and 80s. It is like, here's 70s and 80s marijuana, here's today's hash oil, and it really makes a big difference because we're seeing this younger and younger generation, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders start to consume marijuana. Not only because it's available now and it's in a lot of people's homes, it's pretty easily for them to get access to it. But in the state of Montana, you have to be 21 to be able to have this stuff, or 18 to get your medical license. At 18, you could go down to the doctor and say, I have a bad back, they'll give you a card.
My toenail hurts.
Yep, anything like that.
And just to put a little bit into perspective about the difference between these two, so if you were caught to be in possession of the leaf substance of marijuana,
60
it was a
grams.
misdemeanor offense until you got over a larger quantity, then it was considered potential for distribution. That's when you started to get into felony offenses. The hashish oil, if you had 1 gram of that, that's what constituted a felony offense in the state of Montana. And it's because that type of THC is so much stronger. And like Chief Alvarez mentioned, this is the stuff that we're seeing more and more of in our community is the oil, because along with these new vape pens that are coming out, it's become very popular for kids to put this THC oil into vape pens and smoke it that way. So this has actually been affecting more of the younger crowd because, like Chief Alvarez said, it's just easily accessible now that it's kind of infiltrated our community being legalized in Montana.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
How is that packaged, the oil? I mean, what does it look like?
We see, you know your Carmex containers? They make them rubber. So they make them all rubber and then they stick it in there and it's really, really sticky.
Yeah.
And then once they get it out of there, you have to get it really, really hot. And then those vape pens work really, really well to get it hot to where they're able to consume it. Yeah, so that's what we see the containers a lot, is those.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it actually sold in the oil form?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Now,
It's
that's new.
That changed roughly about 2 years ago.
Yeah, it became legalized. THC products, it wasn't just marijuana that became legalized, it was THC products that became legalized.
And that turns into the brownies, the edibles, they make suckers, they make gummy bears. So those gummies that they handed out this evening, medical marijuana gummies.
Yep.
So it's the THC products.
Yep.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's way more potent, much stronger, and it's definitely a lot more, I honestly believe that the oil has become a bigger problem in the community, especially with younger kids, than even the leaf substance has.
Yeah. And then when they do smoke this with the vape, they can make it to where it's an odorless product to where you're not smelling the burnt marijuana like you used to in the years past.
You had a question?
I was wondering, do you have any idea what one of those little Carmex pots runs financially? Or is it all different based on the strain?
It's all different based on the strain. I know that I went down to one of our local marijuana shops and they said for about an ounce, it's usually about $183. But this was about 2 years ago and they were really concerned about the taxation on it becoming recreational. And they said that 1 ounce is probably going to cost them to sell to their clients about $223. So you could see the big jump in the tax, and so that was pretty shocking. But you know, we still have the street people that'll sell it, and they could get it from anywhere from $60 to whatever, however they feel their strain is. So it's big variety of price differences.
Last thing real quick to touch on as far as marijuana, and then we move on to the other drugs is, So marijuana is legalized in the state of Montana, but it has not been legalized to be sold here recreationally in Beaverhead County. But with that being said, if you drive to Twin Bridges, if you drive to Butte, it is legal. You can buy it there, and it is legal for them to bring back to Dillon and to possess here in Dillon. Yes, ma'am.
And the issue with that is there is going to be a referendum. The city council is going to be considering this within the next 2 weeks. In fact, I think it's next Tuesday night, where they are talking about allowing recreational marijuana sales in Beaverhead County. Now, so far, Beaverhead County has turned that down twice. In the last election, and then at the time when recreational marijuana became available. But there is money from marijuana sales. And because of that, folks are very eager for that additional revenue to be coming in. The problem being is that it will make it even easier for, specifically for our youth to have access when they're not supposed to have any access. But the more open you have as far as different areas of accessibility, you're going to have very likely a growth with that. So that is just going on the city council next Tuesday night. We have a group that will be showing up and saying, we don't think this is a good idea, but there's a very good chance that that will be going on the ballot, and you'll hear a lot more in the future about finding ways to object to that or to endorse it, but we hope you'll object.
So next, methamphetamine. We've seen methamphetamine here in Dillon for a very long time. Meth comes in a variation of different kinds. We've seen it white crystals, we've seen it yellow, we've seen it blue. These people typically smoke it. They also can use a needle intravenously and use it that way. I've also seen somebody eat it. They like to eat it, snort it, yes.
Crush it and snort it.
It's really heartbreaking to see what methamphetamine does to you. I want to say this is only like a 3-year progression of this young lady. You can see on the far left, she looks very normal, and then just within a couple of years, it really deteriorates your body and breaks your body down. And it is just a really bad mess. There's some blue meth. Here's another picture of what the young lady looked like. Here's some crystal meth. It looks like crystals you find at Crystal Park. I don't know what the going value for that is right now, but yeah, I know it's super cheap and it's...
I do.
He'll tell you.
I do, because I actually just had a case last week where I arrested a gentleman for being in possession of methamphetamine, and him and I got a chance to sit down and talk, and he was very open with me about sharing some information. He had just been traveling through Dillon from Arizona, told me that he normally purchases meth. He says he uses meth like coffee. It's an addiction. It's, once you get hooked on it, it's very hard to get off of it. He said he normally buys an 8-ball at a time, which is about a gram of methamphetamine. He said that he normally pays about $50 for a gram of methamphetamine in Arizona. Interestingly enough, he is originally from Wisconsin, where he said that same amount of meth costs about $300. So it really depends on the area that you're in and the accessibility to methamphetamine as far as how expensive it's going to cost you. I would say methamphetamine, along with fentanyl, methamphetamine is probably the most prominent, dangerous drug in this community right now. And yes, Sue.
Oh, I was just gonna say, when you said something about meth as his coffee or whatever, I was doing presentations to the schools regarding NARCAN use, training and that kind of thing, and I asked the PR providers what they were seeing and everything, and one of them said they had somebody come in who admitted to a meth latte.
A what?
A meth latte.
You put it in your latte?
We don't have that here. We do not.
Well, the gentleman that I dealt with, he likes to smoke it, and he also would inject it. That was his ways of taking it. It's kind of funny, I asked him, I said, so you're not localized anywhere for long periods of time. This gentleman worked for a construction company. And I said, so how do you find it? Because if you're moving from place to place, how do you get it? He goes, you're a cop. You know what a meth user looks like, right? I said, yeah, I mean, I have a pretty good ability to pick out somebody I believe uses meth. He goes, so do I. I go to that person, I ask them if they have it, and if they have it, then they give it to me, and if they don't, they know where to point me to. I mean, it's that easy for people to find methamphetamine in this town.
So marijuana is a depressant, and then methamphetamine is a stimulant.
Yes.
So you have one that make you go to sleep maybe, and another one that'll keep you up.
And he actually told me, he said, you know, he works long days in the construction crew. He's like, I take meth, it keeps me going, and it allows me to work longer days, longer hours. And the scary thing is meth is volatile all by itself, but we're seeing fentanyl, which we're going to get into in a few minutes, being mixed with methamphetamine.
Correct. So we're a college town, and we see cocaine. We see it a lot at the college. Really weird. Wouldn't think you'd see that in Dillon, but we have seen this in Dillon. And that's also a stimulant.
Yeah, and with the increase in people we have been having in this town for certain projects and things like that, you've seen it increase significantly. This cocaine has become a lot more prevalent even in Dillon now.
Is that cheap now compared to other drugs?
You know, I really don't know what the going cost for
It's still expensive, but methamphetamine's cheaper.
Oh,
And so it's a lot easier. Meth is a lot cheaper than it used to be.
Yeah.
And we're not seeing these laboratories like we used to see in the 80s and 90s. Literally, it's now coming from these super labs in Mexico, or usually methamphetamine, that's where it's coming from now.
And it's the same thing with all of these drugs we're talking about now. All these still illegal drugs is...
So if somebody's taking that and working, how coherent are they with what they're doing?
Absolutely. Yes.
You know,
Yes.
if they're driving big machinery and
Yes. That's where it's a danger to all of us. If they're using methamphetamine and they're driving to go to work, or they're using heavy equipment at work, it's very dangerous. So that's the tough part for our job is I wish we could catch everybody that has these drugs. I would say we probably catch one out of for every person we catch, there's probably 10 that went by.
and they're driving
Yeah.
machinery and doing
Correct. Absolutely.
I have a quick question. So you're saying you don't think there's a lot of meth labs around anymore, that
No.
it's coming across
No.
the border?
We had the DEA come in for the DUI task force, and they gave an amazing presentation. I stole a lot of my images from their presentation, but we had a DEA agent come in, and she said that Montana has become an end user state, and we don't have these big labs anymore, and we have these our people like to use, and so the cartels have realized they can make a lot of money here, so they just keep bringing it and bringing it and bringing it.
Yeah, and there was just a special on Montana, I think it was within the past couple weeks, on the news where they talked about in every major city in Montana there is some form of the Mexican cartel in those communities.
I've heard that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's true.
Sheriff
Yeah.
Ed Lester did a great presentation on it with the news. It's the one that we shared the other day. Yes,
Yeah.
it's a really good one.
And we don't think we have a full-blown group of Mexican cartel in Dillon, but we have had interactions with people that singularly we believe have had, and then we find out later that they do have connections to the Mexican cartel.
So fentanyl typically is used in the medical industry, and it's an opioid, and they typically use that for pain. And it's just like morphine, you know, something that works really, really well, but it's something that people like to abuse once they realize what it does to them. And so in a controlled environment at the hospital, it works really, really well. But when somebody makes it at their house or gets it from a super lab, it's not regulated like United States USDA. It's not regulated. And so a lethal dose of fentanyl these days, so it comes in prescription pills. People crush it up, they snort it, they smoke it, they ingest it, they'll eat it. But that's a lethal dose of fentanyl. You can see how big the penny is. The penny's not very big. That's equivalent to about 3 dots of your pen on a piece of paper. So that's why fentanyl is so scary. If it's airborne and you inhale it, you can start overdosing.
Yeah.
It's just really, really shocking, and that's where the NARCAN comes in.
Yeah.
And we'll save that for the NARCAN part,
Yeah.
because we still got more drugs to go by.
Yeah, and that fentanyl is coming in every other drug.
Yes.
It's being added to methamphetamine to make methamphetamine more addictive. It's being added to heroin to make heroin more addictive. Because fentanyl on its own is so much more addictive.
They're putting it in the oxycodone, the fake oxys that they sell. Here's the real one. Here's the fake one. The fake one looks better made than the real one. So it's super hard to tell. I couldn't tell the difference if I had to give that to my kids or myself. I wouldn't be able to tell. That's how scary it is. Heroin. We have seen heroin here in Dillon. True story, Wells Fargo drive-through, when Wells Fargo was still working, I got called there because a lady had went through the drive-through backwards and went through backwards again. Well, when I got there, I'm talking with her. I've never seen anybody put their foot through the steering wheel as I was talking to them. I'm like, something's not right. It was very, very heartbreaking to find out later that this is what she was using, and she had been a hardcore addict for years and years. But this is also an opiate, and NARCAN can help somebody when they're overdosing on it.
Yeah. One thing that really stands out about opioids is, so like we've talked about marijuana being a depressant, methamphetamine being a stimulant. An opioid is going to be a drug. If any of you guys have ever had to take prescription pain medications for a legitimate reason, it makes you really tired. So we see people that we call it being on the nod. You'll literally be having a conversation with somebody and they'll just fall asleep on you. And then they'll wake up and then they'll fall asleep on you.
Yes.
So yeah, that's just one fact about opioids.
So we see MDMA, Molly, and ecstasy at the local bars. We see it at the college. It is a party drug. They make them look like vitamins. Obviously, they're catering to the younger people. But the hard part is they also make them in this blue pill form, and they also put fentanyl in these pills as well. There's people.
Yeah, I know. I was like, what is that noise?
Acid, LSD, and acid. We have seen acid here. We've arrested people with it. This is a hallucinogen, and it's bad stuff. But do you think the strawberries are going to be really geared for Tom Welch? I don't know. I love strawberries, but you know, these little strawberry images, they really gear them towards these kids, and it's really heartbreaking.
The thing with acid and LSD is it's a really strange drug, especially for us to deal with when we deal with people who are on it, because methamphetamine can make somebody angry. It can cause hallucinations, but that's not really what that drug methamphetamine is designed for. This is designed for that. So people literally will think they're being chased by a trash can that's trying to eat them because they have these wild hallucinations. And what causes those hallucinations is these drugs affect the brain directly, and it actually causes the internal temperature of your brain to increase, and people can literally go brain dead because of using bad acid. I'm sure you guys have probably heard the term of a bad trip. That's where this comes from, is because it can literally cause people to go brain dead because it overheats the brain. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question. Are you guys seeing much where people are lacing the drinks, you know, like they used to talk about? Are you seeing that much here?
Like drink roofing?
Yeah, roofing. Yeah.
It's here and there. Unfortunately, a lot of the times we hear about it, it's much longer after the fact.
Right.
Somebody says, oh, I think my drink got roofied, and when did this happen? Oh, this happened last weekend. Unfortunately, with that, it's not super prevalent. I would say during this, it normally happens when the school is in session, and it's normally involving college kids. I would say we probably get 5 to 10 cases per year, per school year with that. Unfortunately, like I said, most of the time it's not something we can cooperate, because unless they go in and get tested right away and they know more or less what they think they were roofied by, they're very tough tests to prove because of how quickly
And we got to have the test administered at the hospital, and so it's very, very hard, and sometimes they don't go in right away.
Yeah.
And so it's just a difficult one to detect. We have been seeing mushrooms, hallucinogens. Mushrooms will make you hallucinate. It'll give you the same effect as LSD or a bad trip.
Yep.
Believe it or not, whippets or dust off. We've seen, something that you use your computer keyboard. I've seen it personally. An individual using multiple cans of dust off.
So what do they do? Inhale it?
Yeah. If they inhale it,
There are
Yeah.
literally people who will use cans of spray paint and spray it and inhale the spray paint as they're putting it into their mouth.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll like stick their head into a trash bag and spray it so they get the fumes.
Yeah.
I've seen it done with gasoline, people using gasoline fumes to get high. Dust off, that's a very popular one when it comes to inhalants.
Is that what they used to do, the whipping cream?
Yes.
Yeah, it is a little bit like the whipping cream cans. It's a little different because the toxic fumes and chemicals that are in this are not the same as what's in whipped cream cans. This is way more toxic, and that's what they're getting high off of, is the toxic fumes that are in paint and in this dust off material and in gasoline. That's what they're getting high using.
My generation, it was glue.
Yeah.
That's what everybody was afraid of.
Glue, yes.
Glue.
Glue or the Sharpie pens.
Yeah.
Pens, yes. So
Real
this-
quick, I just have to say this.
What do you got?
These are pretty easy to catch, especially when you have somebody that's using like spray paint. When you see somebody walking around the street and they seem dazed and confused and they have gold paint all over their face. that's a video they show at the academy for us. So
Yeah.
I just think that's funny.
synthetic spice. So this stuff, you can see it says it's called pot potpourri. So this is a synthetic drug that they make to emulate marijuana, but it does not give you a high like marijuana. It gives you a high like methamphetamine, and it makes them really, really angry and really, really wild. It's the craziest thing. But you could buy these over the counter at a smoke shop. Yeah.
But the developers are not targeting kids.
No, no, not at all. They got what, Scooby-Doo, Mad Hatter, Mr. Happy. We see a lot of the K2 Summit Spice. Yeah, it's really, really bad stuff. I wish I could have added one more to this. We just had this recently. Young man was, it's called, what is it, the Benadryl Challenge.
Oh yeah.
And how many Benadryl bottles can you consume to get intoxicated? The bad part is if you consume too much, it'll kill you. And so we just seen that recently. Never thought we'd see that, but we did.
Never thought we'd see people eat Tide Pods, but it's happening. So,
Yeah.
Eat
Absolutely.
what? What did you say?
Tide Pods.
Tide Pods.
It's like what you use to clean your clothes.
For your mind.
Is that the last of the?
That's the last of mine.
Okay, I've got, yes,
I
Sarah.
have one question, please. So the stuff that's in the picture that's geared towards children and you can buy over the counter.
Yes.
That kind of product, is that also a worry of being laced with fentanyl? Like the stuff that you buy at the hot shops?
So we haven't seen this stuff be laced with fentanyl up to this point. That doesn't mean it can't be. What's really weird about it is this isn't actually considered a scheduled drug by like the DEA, because they come out with the recipe for it and the DEA says no, you can't make that, and so they tweak it by just one hair and then they can release it again, and that's what they keep doing over and over and over again. But I believe it's fully possible that it could end up happening. The reason why I don't think it happens as much is because it is legal to purchase as at this point. You can go down to the store and buy it. So it's not like they're trying to corner the illegal drug market per se, like with methamphetamine and heroin and cocaine. But yeah, we haven't necessarily seen it, fentanyl and that yet.
What we have seen, and this was on the news in August of last year in Butte, a group of young kids were using a vape pen and they shared it. Well, it was laced with fentanyl. They didn't know it. And I believe one of the young children died from it. And so that's not too far from home. Butte's not 60 miles. And so we just don't know what kind of poisons are going into those vapes. And you know, you have to be 21 to buy vape products now, but we're seeing it more and more in our junior high and elementary school, a lot more.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, it's funny, we were just talking about that case last night in Ennis, but nobody knows the rest of the story, and maybe you guys do. I thought that they were provided that by an adult.
And they
that
might,
was known to those kids.
they very well could have. It very well could have been. I don't know all the details on it.
It like
I know you
disappeared.
could. I know you could Google it, and there's an article on it by KXLF, and you could watch that. But that's all I know is I remember watching it on the news, and it's just heartbreaking to see our children. You know, I thank you guys for coming because fentanyl is so easy to put into all these other little things, and if we don't get, we weren't able to connect to the Wi-Fi here. But I'll play a 3-minute video on my phone later after you guys go through the NARCAN training. And it's of a San Diego Sheriff's deputy where they go to a car and they find a white substance. And the other officer goes, you need to watch out, that might be fentanyl. And by the time the officer never touches it, by the time he comes back to the back of the patrol car, he passes out. And they start administering NARCAN, and it's very, very heartbreaking. And
Was it just because he inhaled?
just because he inhaled it. Yep, by the time he opened the door and whatever kind of little breeze came, that was it. That's how dangerous it is for us. That's how dangerous it is for the public, for the children. And so if these parents have it in their homes and their 3-year-old's crawling on the ground or their infant and they pick up a pill, that child's not going to make it. No.
So our goal is to try to get NARCAN in a lot of places because not only that, but our first responders. Imagine being an EMT and you come upon a car accident, touching it, opening the window, or our fire department.
Yeah, we went to an overdose this year, and my partner and I and one of the deputies, we said, hey, we suspect this is fentanyl. We need to take all the precautions we can. It ended up being fentanyl. But my partner looked at me and he goes, hey, don't worry, I got my NARCAN. I said, I got mine too. Mine's in my vest. It's in my bag. And he goes, well, I'm going to leave mine right here in case something happens. So we left it on the bed as we processed the scene to figure out what happened. And it was just scary because especially knowing how dangerous this stuff is, it's just like drinking a beer. I could drink a beer different than Kim can drink a beer. Our bodies are so different. Everybody's body tolerates things differently. I could eat a cookie and it's going to treat me different than it's going to treat Kim. It's just the same thing. This drug is so scary. It treats everybody different. Yeah.
Have you guys put different precautions in when you suspect something like that? I mean, I don't know if face masks are even useful against that.
Yeah, we do have face masks in the car, and it's at our discretion to use them. We're attempting not to test. We usually have test kits of where we can test what we suspect is meth. We're attempting not to test it because if we open it,
Yes.
we're exposing ourselves. And if we could try to limit it, we
Yeah.
want to try to protect ourselves.
The unfortunate thing is most of the time when we go into calls, we wish we had all the information, but we never do. And so, you know, a lot of times we're going to call it a medical emergency and somebody's just stopped breathing. And so, you know, yeah, the thought has to cross your mind, but our thought is also we need to get in and try to start administering aid and help to that person. And then as you get in there and you're like, oh man, look, there's a syringe right there, there's a baggie right there. And at that point in time, you're there. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So that's unfortunately one of the risks that come with responding to those kind of calls. So I know we went through this whole list of drugs. 2 other drugs I just want to tell you guys about. This will be 30 seconds long. Bath salts. I'm sure everybody here has probably heard of bath salts, but they're also a synthetic drug that you can go into a smoke shop and buy. Those are the drugs that you hear people take and then they go and eat somebody. That's like you completely lose your mind and go off the rails drug. We don't see that. I haven't seen it since I've been here in Dillon, but it used to be very popular. It's very close to like PCP. Another drug though that is around that is available for consumers to just buy over the counter is a drug called Kratom. I have seen that drug in Dillon. I have seen high school kids getting involved in that drug. And kratom's very interesting. It's a blend of like different synthetic things like spices. But what's interesting about it is if you take a little bit of it, you get the effects of like methamphetamine. If you take a lot of it, you get the effects of like heroin. So it's very interesting because I had an overdose case where I thought that the guy was overdosed on heroin or fentanyl, and we ended up finding out it was kratom that he had taken, and that's an over-the-counter drug, and that's something that has become more popular in Montana. So
How do you spell that?
it's Kratom, I believe.
I've never heard of it.
Isn't it sold at like Town Pump?
I don't know if you can get it at Town Pump, but I'm sure you can get it at Jim's Smoke Shop. That was one of the drugs when we went to that thing down in Boise that they brought up and talked about. And lo and behold, we came back to Dillon and here it was. So, all right.
Erin Montgomery checks for it everywhere she goes, our tobacco specialist, you know.
Yeah, for that kratom.
Yeah, she comes back to the office and she's like, there it was again.
Yeah, it's becoming a more and more popular thing. So now we're going to kind of move on to the second portion of tonight. We're going to talk specifically about NARCAN and naloxone. That's the actual medical name for it is naloxone, but it's pretty much referred to as NARCAN. So I am a trainer for NARCAN and for training other people on how to become certified to use NARCAN. In conversation about tonight and this event, what we have decided is I am going to talk to you guys about what are the signs to look out for somebody that's overdosing, talk to you guys about what NARCAN does, and talk to you guys about how to use NARCAN, but we're not going to go into the hands-on part of the training that would come with getting a certification. If you guys that are here tonight would have any interest in doing a class to become certified, we can set that up, but there's some prerequisites that have to be met before we can actually do that training. You're supposed to have done an online training before getting certified in the hands-on portion. So, but the good thing is that I want everybody to know is you don't have to be certified to administer NARCAN to somebody, okay? It's just like CPR. You don't have to be trained to provide CPR to somebody because you are covered. I'm totally drawing a blank on the name, Good Samaritan Act. So, leaving here tonight, you are going to know what to look out for, how to use NARCAN, and what is the purpose of NARCAN. And I believe at the end of the event tonight, you guys are actually going to be able to take a box of NARCAN with you to carry with you in your car or to keep in your house or in your purse or whatever you want to do with it. And if you guys ever came across somebody that you believed was in an overdose situation, you would 100% have the ability to provide that person with NARCAN and not have to worry about any liability or issue like that, okay? So I just want to make that clear to everybody. I'm going to teach you guys, but it's not like you guys are going to leave here today with a certification on how to use it. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, perfect. So by chance, did anybody or did everybody grab a copy of these 2 pages as they came in?
Everybody should have one.
Everybody should have one? Okay, perfect. So these are the 5 essential steps when encountering suspected overdoses, okay? So we're gonna go through that. I'm gonna talk about what are the signs to look out for somebody that's potentially overdosing, and then we'll go into what is NARCAN and how does it solve this problem, okay? So the 5 essential steps when encountering a suspected overdose. So the first thing that you guys want to do if you come across somebody that you believe is overdosing is get medical help on the way, okay? You want to call 911 or instruct somebody else to call 911 because that person's going to need to be taken to the hospital regardless of if you issue them NARCAN or not. Shut this so it's not right. They're gonna have to get to the hospital regardless of if you issue them NARCAN or not, because here's the thing with NARCAN is stopping the high that they are experiencing, and it is blocking the receptors in the brain that are being shut down by the overdose, but it is not removing the drugs from that person's system. The drugs are still going to be there. It is possible that somebody can be overdosing and be issued NARCAN and then come out of the high, and then start to overdose again. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, okay? So here are the signs that you guys can be aware of if you see somebody that you think might be having an overdose, okay? So slow or absent breathing, unresponsiveness, blush fingertips or lips, fingernails or lips, pinpoint pupils, and a pulse that is very weak, slow, or absent. So those are the signs that you can look at somebody and say whether you think this person might be having an overdose or whether they might be having a different kind of a medical emergency. And they may have just a couple of these symptoms, or they could have all of them. But don't just because, oh yeah, they have pinpoint pupils and they have a slow heart rate, they can't be having an overdose. They didn't have all these other things. They're not required to have all those other things to be having an overdose. Pinpoint pupils is one thing that we know to look for that's pretty common in somebody having an opioid overdose. It's something we normally regularly see with those kind of a situation. But yeah, so those are the signs to look for. And the things that you can check on the person is going to be assess for responsiveness by shouting at the person, tapping on their shoulders, or by doing a sternal rub. Okay, you can shake the person, yell, try to get them to wake up, try to get their attention. If they're able to answer questions, then you might know that if they're a little more coherent, then maybe they're not as in dire need of NARCAN right away. But those are just things to check. Check if the person's breathing by watching the rise and fall of their chest. And then if trained to do so, briefly check the person's carotid pulse. I'm sure probably everybody in here knows how to check a pulse to some degree. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the person's neck. It can be checked on their wrist, but that's a good thing to check for to find out if their hearts, if you don't see that they're breathing very well, check that pulse, and if it's getting slow, that's more concerning than if it's a rapid pulse. Because if it's a rapid pulse, obviously their heart's pumping fast and they're getting blood and oxygen, and that's the concern. So step 3 is going to be to support the person's breathing. People who have overdosed on opioids die due to disruption of breathing. So what is an overdose? Pretty much what an overdose is that that person has ingested so many drugs that the drugs have now gone to that person's brain, and it starts shutting down receptors, like your body telling yourself you need to breathe, your body telling your heart it needs to pump blood. And that is why people die, because those receptors start shutting off in people's brains, and they pretty much, their body just shuts down. Their body tells them to stop breathing, their body tells their heart to stop pumping blood, and then they just go into failure. So if trained to provide rescue breaths or CPR, do so prior to administering naloxone. So that's what's kind of interesting. You might think that the first step would be to apply naloxone, but it's not. If that person is not breathing or if they are unresponsive, the first step is going to be to start performing CPR on that person. If the victim is not breathing at all and you are not trained in rescue breathing or are unable to do so, start compression only or use hand only CPR to give naloxone. So if you're not trained to use rescue breaths, then just start doing compressions. If someone else is performing the above interventions, naloxone may be given simultaneously. So if you have somebody else that's there, have somebody start performing CPR on the person if they're unresponsive, and then you can have the other person administer NARCAN while that person is still providing CPR. So then we get to step 4, which is going to be administer naloxone. It is not possible to overdose on NARCAN. You could give a person 30 shots of NARCAN and it's not going to cause them any harm. I don't know if you guys listened to the radio at all this morning, but Chief Alvarez and I sat down and talked with Jeremy, and he asked us a question of what would happen to me if I had nothing wrong with me and I had NARCAN administered to it. The answer is nothing. It's not going to cause that person any harm. It's only going to help that person. Now, with that being said, that doesn't mean it doesn't always work. So if you give that person 1 shot of NARCAN, you may not see an instant change. That person may not just immediately come back to being their normal self. It might take a second or third dose on that person to get them to come out of that high and for them to start to return back to their normal state. One thing that we do occasionally see is when somebody gets Narcan and gets brought back out of their high, for whatever reason you think, well, you're welcome, I just saved your life, like maybe you should be grateful. They actually come out aggressive because they're actually upset and angry because you just took them out of their high. They don't realize the fact that they were dying. They just think I was really enjoying this high that I was experiencing and now I'm back to just feeling like my normal self. So that is just something to be aware of. If you do administer Narcan to somebody, know that there is the potential that they could come out of their high and start being aggressive towards you. Again, it's why step one, always call for help, call 911, get medical, get EMS, get law enforcement on their way to your location to further provide help. So monitor for the return of normal breathing. Re-administer naloxone every 3 minutes if the person does not begin breathing normally. Naloxone is effective for 30 to 45 minutes, so if it is possible for a victim to relapse after it's worn off. So that's again why it's so important to get somebody to the hospital or to get them medical attention, because if you Narcan them and then they come back and they're like, oh, I'm good, thank you so much, I appreciate it, and then they go home, like I said, the drugs are still in their system, so it's possible that they could start relapsing and that they actually could go back into their overdose state. So that's why they have to be monitored and made sure that they are continuously checked on. Naloxone will not be effective on uppers or downers, but is not harmful if given even if the person is not suffering from an opioid overdose. So what that means is if this person is overdosing on methamphetamine and you issue them Narcan, it's not going to help. It's not going to do anything for them, unfortunately. But that being said, you're not going to cause them any harm or put these people in any worse of a position by administering Narcan. It could be a combination. They could be on methamphetamine that is laced with fentanyl, and if it's the fentanyl that is causing them the overdose, then the Narcan will stop the overdose because it's going to react with the fentanyl because the fentanyl is the opioid. So Narcan only applies to opioids, which would be fentanyl and heroin. Those are the two opioids that it will really help save somebody if they're in an opioid state. So after you administer the naloxone, you're going to want to monitor the person's response after medication administration, continue rescue breathing and compressions until the person begins to wake up. So if you issue the Narcan and that person starts to wake up, then you can stop administering CPR. But if you administer Narcan and that person's still unresponsive, they're still not breathing, then continue on with the CPR. So you're going to continue with compressions until the person begins to wake up, breathe on their own, or advanced medical help arrives. If the person begins to wake up, you're going to roll them into the recovery position, which is just rolling them onto their side. It's for the same purpose of like if somebody is vomiting, you want to roll them onto their side because you don't want them to asphyxiate themselves by re-inhaling their vomit if they were to throw up, because that could happen with them having an overdose. They could vomit, so that's why you want to roll them over onto their side and get them into that recovery position. And then you're going to help protect their airway if they're not able to do so themselves, which is going to just be to tilt their head back and make sure that airway stays unobstructed. A person who has received naloxone may experience signs of actual withdrawal, such as aggression, sweating, and vomiting. So like I kind of touched on before, you're pulling them out of that high. So their body is not going to exactly know how to respond right away because their body knows they were going through this kind of roller coaster and on the rise of the high that they were experiencing, and then you just ripped it off like a Band-Aid and put them into this state of feeling nothing as far as their high is concerned. So they could start vomiting, they could be aggressive. Those are all things to consider, and then that's really the step 5, okay? You're obviously at that point going to just continue to monitor the person until EMS arrives, and then once EMS arrives, they're going to take that person to the hospital to be evaluated. The do's and don'ts in responding to opioid overdose: do support the person's breathing, do put the person in the recovery position if he or she is breathing on their own, do stay with the person and keep him or her warm, don't slap or forcefully stimulate the person as this may injure the person. Like we talked about, shake the person, you can yell at them, try to get a response, but don't just start slapping and kicking them and be like, get up, come on, you're fine. You don't want to do that because then you're going to hurt the person. Don't put the person in a cold shower or bath. I don't know, I know that I've seen that on the movies before. People think that they're overheating, so they go and put somebody in a cold shower. Don't do that. Just keep them warm, because actually when somebody starts feeling hot or sweating, it's actually because their internal temperature is cooling. Am I correct in that, Sue? You know more medical than I do, so I don't want to give bad information, but that is my understanding of it.
I think the key things to remember is call 911, get EMS coming immediately. You can administer this, you could do CPR. They don't have to have all those signs.
Yep.
And then your main thing is call 911 and EMS. It gets EMS going there faster.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was able to get find out.
Yeah, cool.
Video.
Sweet.
I think
We'll
it'll
show the
play.
video.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I forgot to ask earlier, how many overdoses have you guys, do you know of in Beaverhead County in like the last 6 months?
Death?
It's on odd map, but I
It is.
forgot to look.
I want to say at least 3 overdoses of fentanyl related in just the last 3 months. I haven't
So
been
in
on.
2023.
Yeah, I haven't been on OD map in a while. I need to reset my password. Yeah, I know our sheriff's departments, they're coroners, and so they go on this overdose map a lot more than we do. But this map is a great tool for us because it'll tell us when there's a big overdose death in Butte, and we could say, oh man, is our users going to Butte to get the same stuff? So it gives us a tool in our pocket to have an idea. Yes.
I would like to say, I think these programs are wonderful. I think people need to be more aware of the terrible statistics so that it wakes them up.
Yes.
You know, oh yeah, heard about this fentanyl. Tell them it's here. Tell them we've had
Yes.
3 overdoses. You know, say the words. People have to hear the words and be aware. Every parent will tell you their kid didn't do it. But we know better. I have boys. We all know better. And I think we need to put it in the paper, put it in the Dillenite, tell people, come, learn, see the signs, see what you're looking for. You know, there should be 100 people here.
Yeah.
It should be overflowing.
Sarah, you got a question?
Yeah, I just was wondering if there's a risk if you are doing anything like near their face and they're overdosing, if they can breathe any fentanyl on you, if they have any residue on their face from taking it, or if they vomit. Is there any?
There could be, if they inhaled it
Yeah.
and you go down for CPR, there is a very inherent risk of you getting the same effects. Yes.
Yeah, there is a possibility of
Yeah.
that. Yes, ma'am.
I think that's why they recommend in those kind of situations that you just do chest compressions,
Yeah.
and not rescue breaths.
Yep. The one thing that I just want to go over real quick before we watch the video here is, so you guys are all going to be allowed to take a box of NARCAN, and just so you guys understand, so what you guys are going to get in that box of NARCAN are 2 of these nasular sprays. That's how NARCAN is administered. You take the tip that is protruding here, you stick it up the person's nostril, and then it has a plunger on the bottom that you push, and that's what's going to spray that NARCAN into that person's nose. You get 2 of them. Each one of these contains 1 dose of NARCAN. So don't just double pump into both of their nostrils. Like it was saying, administer 1. Since you have a box of 2, hold on to the other one, see how that person does over the next couple minutes. If 3 minutes goes by and that person is still not improving, you can go ahead and use that second one that you have. But they're very simple to use. These 2 that I have right here are trainers, so they are just like dummies of what the actual ones are. I'll put these back on the table before everybody leaves today, and you guys can take a look at them and just understand how they work. Like I said, they're very simple. It's literally just you stick it up the nose, press the plunger, and that's what's going to spray into that person's nose. But obviously, check these out so that way you kind of have an understanding of how they work, and that way you don't practice using your actual NARCAN kits.
So you're actually using the whole thing that's in there.
Yep, you're going to push it all the way in, and that's going to be one dose, and that's going to be one administration of it. If you were to try to pump it 3 or 4 times, it's only going to really work once because it's only loaded for one dose.
Do you want to open one of these up and just show them what it's like?
We have it right here.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, so they comes in a sealed pack, okay? And it's going to say right here, NARCAN nasal or spray. On the box, it explains that each one of these is a singular dose. And like I said, you just put your fingers on the top here, put it on the plunger, put this into the person's nose, and press the button to spray it in.
And can you get those at the drugstore now?
So I don't know here in Dillon. I know you can. I know it is possible because I've seen it in people's houses.
You can see our tester. We'll pass it around, and then that's same thing. Everything's identical.
We were just talking when we first arrived that we believe there's actually a NARCAN vending machine in the Helena
PD
police station that you can go in and get NARCAN. It is something that can be purchased at like a drugstore. I don't know if like Safeway carries it here, but I know it's available for public.
Ours is free today.
And it came with cookies.
Yes.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yes.
It's $40, you have to ask the pharmacist.
Is it?
It was recently bought by somebody at Walmart in Butte.
Okay.
But it wasn't like sitting out, they had to go ask.
Okay. Yeah, but it isn't something you need a prescription for. You can ask, and they would provide it to you. Yes, ma'am.
There's actually a program through the state right now that you can go on, and if you have a family member that has been known to have drug use, or you have some association with that, you can actually go in and get free doses mailed to you at your home. So you can get it that way too.
Yeah.
Yes.
And before we leave, I will pull up a website real quick to show you guys that there is a website that if you guys are interested in getting certified in it, they offer the online course that I'm certified in, but there's also an ordering sheet on there. So if like you guys work for a business or an organization and want to have NARCAN provided at your guys's your business, then you can actually submit an order form and it's free through the state. So I'll show you guys where you guys can find that.
So if there's somebody who wants to do the online training but needs a hands-on, are you certified that you could do, are you a trained trainer?
Yes, yeah, so I'm actually a trainer for NARCAN. I would say that if people are interested in actually having us do like a certification class, we can absolutely do that. But it would be a lot better if we do it as a class, not like just individual people reaching out, because it's about a 45-minute long class that we have to go through and do a hands-on experience and scenarios.
Okay.
Yeah, so I
That's
think we
another
talked.
great thing to advertise.
Yeah, and I think we talked about that with Ms.
Yeah.
Patton about setting up a date to where we can actually do like offer a class, so that way people can sign up. We get a list of how many people and make sure everybody completes the online training before they come, because that is something that has to be done before they actually do the hands-on portion, and we'll make sure that that gets set up.
And the next time you go to see your doctor for your annual or for a checkup or whatever, visit with him or her as far as whether it's appropriate for you to, that you have a family member or whatever, and that you may have a reason to take them home. The thing being is, you're going to get a box of NARCAN. That's 2 doses. The person may need 5, 6. That's why you call 911 or 988 first, or 911.
And one thing I wanted to say too, through public health, we're able to order it, and that's available for anybody that wants to come in and get it. I've ordered it from the schools, but they don't really need me. It's become really simple now, but you don't really have to be a certified trainer to do it anymore. I think they've really simplified it from when it first came out.
Yeah.
It was to be a master trainer and then do all this, but they just want to keep it as simple as possible.
Yes.
So
And they want it
everybody will do
everywhere.
And they want it
Everywhere.
everywhere.
And a question was asked to me when we first arrived of like, what is the benefit of a certification? for us, it kind of just covers us more in our job.
Right.
And like for teachers, it's good for them to have the certification, but for you guys just to be caring citizens of this community, there's really not a need for you to have the certification because they want it in people's hands. They want it to be out there in the public, and so there's not necessarily a requirement or a necessity to have a certification.